Hello Magic fans and welcome to a slightly different video. This is sort of a review of the Lord of the Rings Commander party. So basically there are some rules. So you need a table of 3 to 4 players, and then before the game begins, everybody chooses one of these factions. So either hobbits, elves, Gondor and Rohan, or dwarves. And then of course there's this game board. Right. Okay. So basically, when you choose one of these factions, after your draw step, you have to choose a ring. So there are 9 rings for mortal men, and what it does is you create a 2/2 red human knight creature token. You have your 7 rings for the dwarf lords, and for that you create a tap treasure token. You have 3 rings for the elven kings, which lets you draw a card, and the 1 ring to rule them all. And if you choose this ring, creatures you control can't be blocked this turn, and each opponent creates a 3/3 black wraith creature token with menace. So each of the different factions have an ability. So for example, if you're playing this Hobbit faction, whenever your commander enters the battlefield, you create a food token. And whenever a commander, so if it is your commander, you draw a card. So for the elves, whenever a commander enters the battlefield, you get to scry 2. If it's your commander, you draw a card. For Gondor and Rohan, whenever a commander enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. If that creature that entered is your commander, you draw a card. And for the last one, for the dwarves, whenever a commander enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on up to 1 target creature. If that creature that entered is your commander, you draw a card. So basically, whenever you play your commander, you get to draw a card. And then it gives some other abilities that are actually pretty good with the mechanics from Lord of the Rings as a set. And for example, if you play them with the Lord of the Rings pre-constructed decks, unfortunately not all of the, of course, dwarves aren't represented in the decks, but we have Sauron. But basically, for example, if you play the Frodo deck and you're a Hobbit as your faction, you get the additional benefit of the food tokens because it's a food token centered deck. For example, if you're playing elves and you're using the Galadriel deck, you get the benefit of the extra scry, which some of the mechanics for elves in Lord of the Rings you benefit from. So I think it's a good idea. So if you have a chance to go to your local game store and play during the Commander Party event, you do get like, for this particular one, each participant is given a Life Crafter's Bestiary retro foil, retro frame card. If you go to a premium store, you get a foil version of the card. If you go to your non-premium store, you get a non-foil version of the card. So yeah, basically that's it. It's an additional mechanic that you can use to play when you're playing your normal commander. Oh, so by the way, I need to mention that if you choose, for example, during your turn, after you draw, you choose the 1 ring, then if your faction, for example, is elves, you flip to temptation. So in temptation, you said you may not choose a ring while temptation is face up for you, and then after you draw your draw step, you lose 4 life. Then you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, you flip this card over for each opponent, and each opponent draws a card. So it might have a strong ability, but of course there's a drawback if you go to the temptation side. So after you draw, you place rings. So for example, it's up to 8 rings, and it's my turn. Everything else is sort of almost there, but I really want to create a 2/2 knight token creature. So I put a ring after I draw, and then I remove all of the rings from the 9 rings for mortal men. And for example, my faction is elves. I have to turn this into temptation side. I do get the ability, so I do get that 2/2 knight. But after that, during my next turn, I don't get to place a ring after I draw, and I have to try to decide if I want to pay 2 and flip it back to normal. So some strategy will go into how you place the rings. I think the first player will be the first person to have to go into temptation if everybody plays very conservatively and tries to fill up all of the rings without being tempted for the first couple of rounds in the table. Yeah, so I think yeah, again, when I get a chance to play in other commander parties in the future, I'll make a similar video. And let me know what you think if you were able to play during the time that the commander party Lord of the Rings was available to play at your local game store. And if not, if this is some sort of format that you would be interested in playing. Thanks. Bye.